I always thought that no matter what happened, my sister and I would be on the same side. We grew up sharing everything: food, clothes, secrets, even a bed when the winters were too cold and the blankets too thin. But I was wrong. Because when she married into money, she didn't just leave our neighborhood behind, she left us behind. In today's story, I'm going to tell you how my sister married a rich man, turned her back on the family that raised her, treated us like we were an embarrassment, and how I quietly watched, waited, and eventually revealed who her perfect, wealthy husband really was. If you enjoy long, emotional revenge stories about toxic rich families, social class betrayal, and secrets finally coming to light, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with me until the very end, because the way this story unfolds is not just about revenge, it's about truth. My name is Sofia, and I grew up in a place most rich people only see through the window of a fast car. Our street was noisy, crowded, and full of people just trying to make it to the end of the month without falling apart. My parents worked hard every single day. My father as a bus driver, and my mother cleaning houses in neighborhoods that looked like a different universe from ours. I have one sister, Alina, 2 years older than me. When we were little, we were inseparable. We slept in the same bed, whispered stories to each other at night, stole pieces of bread from the kitchen, and promised that one day, we would both get out of here together. Alina was always the beautiful one. She had the kind of face people noticed: big eyes, perfect smile, thick hair that never seemed to misbehave like mine. I was more invisible, the quiet one with good grades and a face no one wrote poems about. I never envied her beauty. If anything, I was proud of her. We used to joke that she would be the one to marry a handsome prince and I would be the one to run his finances. We were poor, but we were together. At least, that's what I thought mattered. When Alina was 23, she got a job as a receptionist at an upscale gym in a fancy part of town. It was the kind of place where people paid more for a monthly membership than we paid for rent. That's where she met Gabriel. Gabriel was the kind of man who looked like he had been born in a suit. Tall, confident, with a perfect smile and a habit of speaking like everything he said was important. He owned a chain of small businesses and came from a wealthy family that had been comfortable for generations. He started flirting with Alina, and for the first time, she was the one stepping into the world we had only seen from a distance. He sent her flowers, took her to restaurants we'd only seen on TV, picked her up in expensive cars that made our neighbors stare out their windows. At first, it was exciting. She would come home glowing, telling me about the places he showed her, the things he said, the promises he made. He says I deserve more than this life, she told me one night, glancing around at the peeling paint on our walls. He says I'm special. I believed her. She was special. We both were. I just didn't realize yet that, in his eyes, more than this life meant less of us. The more serious her relationship with Gabriel became, the less we saw of Alina. At first, it was small things. She missed a family dinner. She skipped a Sunday lunch. She said she was too tired to come by after work. Then it became bigger. Weeks would pass without her visiting. When my mother called, Alina would answer with a rushed, distracted voice, always in a meeting or on the way out. She stopped sleeping over, stopped sharing little details about her day, stopped laughing with me the way she used to. The first time Gabriel came to our house, he wore an expression that didn't match his words. He brought flowers for my mom, shook my dad's hand, and complimented the food. But when he looked around our small living room, the old sofa, the faded curtains, the TV with a missing button, there was something like disgust in his eyes. He hid it well. Alina didn't notice. I did. After he left, I overheard him outside, talking to her near his car. "It's cute," he said, his voice low but not low enough. Very humble. "But you don't belong here anymore, love. You know that, right?" I never forgot that sentence. Within a year, he proposed. Not in our neighborhood, not in front of our family, but on a weekend trip in some beach town full of people like him. Alina came home with a ring so shiny it looked like it had its own light. My parents were overjoyed. They saw it as a miracle, their daughter leaving behind the struggle, finding someone who could give her what they never could: security, comfort, a future without constant fear of bills. We were invited to the wedding, of course, but the way it was organized already told me everything I needed to know. The ceremony was going to be in a private venue, with his family's friends, business partners, and important people. Our side of the guest list was limited. "We can't invite everyone from the neighborhood," Alina said when my mom asked why she hadn't invited some old family friends. "It's Complicated. There are numbers, seats, you know how these things are. But I knew it wasn't about chairs or plates. It was about shame. On the day of the wedding, we arrived in our best clothes, which still looked cheap, next to the outfits of Gabriel's guests. His family wore designer suits and dresses, diamonds glittering under the lights. I saw the way his relatives looked at us politely, curiously, and with that same distance I had seen in his eyes the first time he entered our home. During the reception, someone at their table asked where we were from. Alina hesitated for a second before naming our neighborhood, then quickly adding, "But I don't live there anymore." Of course. She laughed nervously, like she needed them to know that part of her was already buried. My chest tightened. After the wedding, Alina moved into a beautiful apartment with Gabriel marble floors. Big windows, view of the nicer parts of the city. She sent my mom some pictures, but didn't invite us over right away. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. My parents tried to respect her new life, telling themselves she was busy, that she was adapting, that rich people lived differently. But I knew. Every time I called, she sounded less like my sister and more like someone playing a role. Her voice had a new tone, colder, more polished, sprinkled with words and expressions she never used before. Once, my mom asked if she and my dad could come visit and see the apartment. Alina paused for a long second, then said, "Of course, but let me talk to Gabriel first. You know how he is about unexpected guests." Unexpected guests. Our parents. I felt something crack inside me. One day, months later, she finally invited me alone to have coffee near where she lived, not at her place in a cafe nearby. When I arrived, she was dressed in an elegant outfit, makeup perfect, hair shiny and straight. She looked like someone from a magazine, but not like my sister. She hugged me quickly, careful not to smudge anything. We talked about superficial things at first. The weather, my job, the traffic. Whenever I tried to bring up our parents, she changed the subject. At some point, I decided to be direct. "Why haven't you invited mom and dad over?" I asked. "They just want to see where you live. They're proud of you," she sighed, looking annoyed. "Sofia, you don't understand," she said. "Gabriel's family is different. They're very particular about who comes over. They're used to a certain standard." "A standard?" I repeated. "Our parents raised us with nothing, and now there's a standard they don't meet." She rolled her eyes slightly. "It's not about them personally. It's about the environment. They don't know how to behave around certain people, certain situations. I don't want them to feel uncomfortable." She didn't want us to embarrass her. That's what she meant. I stared at her for a long moment and realized the truth. My sister, the girl who once swore we would always stand together, was now ashamed of where she came from, ashamed of us. I went home that day with a heavy heart. And a different kind of determination. If she was willing to throw away her own family for the illusion of status, then I wanted to know exactly what and who she was doing it for. I started paying more attention to Gabriel whenever I had the chance. Social media was the first window. He loved posting pictures of his life. Expensive dinners, business meetings, trips, charity galas, motivational quotes about success and hard work. But behind the polished photos, I noticed patterns. He followed a lot of very young women, fitness influencers, models, girls who wrote flirty comments under his posts. He posted about honesty in business while his company's reviews were full of complaints from employees. About late payments and toxic management. Whenever I did see him in person, at rare family occasions, he treated us with that same superficial politeness, but he was never really listening when we talked. His eyes were always scanning the room for someone more important. One night, while scrolling through local news articles for work, I stumbled on a small piece about a labor lawsuit filed against one of his companies. A group of workers were accusing management of forcing unpaid overtime and firing people who complained. The name of the CEO listed. Gabriel. I saved the article. I started digging deeper. The more I looked, the more I found. Old news articles about shady business practices. Comments on forums from ex-employees talking about being threatened. Mentions of him buying silence from people who tried to expose him. And then, there was something worse. Through a friend who worked in hospitality, I heard rumors that Gabriel was a regular in certain high-end bars and hotels, always with women who were not my sister. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was someone with the same name, someone who looked like him. I didn't want to think that Alina had traded us for a man who didn't even value her loyalty, but then I saw it with my own eyes. One evening, coming home from work on a different route, I passed by a fancy restaurant where important people liked to be seen. Through the glass, I saw him. Gabriel was sitting at a table with a woman who was definitely not my sister, younger, dressed in something tight and expensive. Laughing and touching his arm like they had practiced it. He wasn't acting like a man in a professional meeting. He was acting like a man on a date. I took out my phone and took pictures. Not out of impulse, out of strategy. For days, I couldn't sleep properly. Part of me wanted to run to Alina and tell her everything. Part of me wanted to burn his perfect image to the ground in front of everyone who had ever looked down on us. But I knew my sister. I knew that if I just showed up with screenshots and accusations, she might choose him over me again. Pride is a powerful cage, so I decided to be methodical. I collected more evidence over time. I took screenshots of the labor complaints, saved links to the lawsuits, kept copies of every article that showed his real character. Whenever I could, I gathered proof of his affairs, photos, timestamps, witnesses. I wasn't going to confront her with rumors. I was going to confront her with the kind of truth you can't argue with. The moment came sooner than I expected. One night, my mother called me crying. She had just gotten off the phone with Alina. Gabriel had argued with her because she sent some money to help with a medical bill for our father. He had told her, in plain words, that his money was not for rescuing poor relatives and that she needed to cut the cord if she wanted their marriage to work. My mom, in between sobs, repeated his words like they were knives. Something inside me snapped. He wasn't just using my sister. He was actively trying to erase us from her life. I called Alina and told her we needed to talk. Not at a cafe, not in his apartment. At our parents' house. She resisted at first, said she was busy, but I insisted. And there was something in my voice that must have scared her, because she agreed. Alina arrived a few days later, looking out of place in our small living room, wearing clothes that didn't belong to this part of town anymore. My parents sat on the sofa, tense and quiet. I took a deep breath and started. I know you think we don't understand your life now, I said. I know you think this is about jealousy or not accepting that you've moved up. It's not. This is about who you married. She rolled her eyes slightly. Not this again. Sofia, you've never liked him because he's rich and you think he's arrogant. You're exaggerating. Without a word, I put my phone on the table, screen facing up, and opened the gallery. Picture after picture. Article after article. Lawsuits. Employee testimonies. Photos of Gabriel with other women at restaurants, at hotel lobbies, leaving in cars late at night. At first, she tried to look away. Then she forced herself to look, her hands shaking, her face draining of color. I didn't want to believe rumors, I said quietly. So I waited until I had more than rumors. Tears welled up in her eyes. You don't know the full story, she whispered weakly. He's under a lot of pressure. Those women, it's not what it looks like. Sometimes rich men. It's complicated. No, I interrupted, my voice firmer than I'd ever used with her. It's not complicated, it's simple. He is the man who told you to be ashamed of us. He is the man who doesn't let you invite our parents to your home. He is the man who told you their suffering is not his problem. And now you see who he is when you're not looking. My father, who had stayed silent, finally spoke. Baby, he said, his voice breaking, we never wanted his money, we just wanted our daughter. If he takes that away too, what's left? Alina broke. She covered her face and started to sob, ugly, uncontrolled sobs that didn't care about mascara or perfect hair. For the first time in a long time, she looked like my sister again. After that night, everything moved quickly. Alina confronted Gabriel with the evidence. At first, he denied, then minimized, then turned it around on her. You talked to your poor family behind my back. He shouted, according to what she later told me. You let them dig into my life like I'm some criminal. I gave you everything. You think you'd have this life without me. Those words, your poor family, and this life without me, were the final nails in the coffin. She left, not without difficulty. He threatened her financially, emotionally, even legally. But she had something he didn't, proof. And a family willing to stand beside her when his world stopped being so shiny. The lawsuits from employees intensified. Some of the women he had been seeing started speaking up, too. His image as the perfect successful businessman began to crumble. I didn't have to ruin him alone. I just had to remove the protection of silence. Alina moved back in with us for a while. It wasn't easy. She had to adjust from marble floors back to cracked tiles, from imported wine back to cheap coffee, from status to simplicity. There were awkward moments. Old resentment. Guilt hanging in the air like smoke. One night, just the two of us in our old bedroom, she turned to me and whispered, "I was so ashamed, of this place, of you, of Mom and Dad. I thought if I pretended it wasn't part of me, I could be someone else, someone better." I looked at her and said, "You were never better because of him. You were always enough because you were you. He just made you forget that." We cried. We forgave slowly. As for Gabriel, last I heard, he was still rich. People like him usually land on their feet, but his name was stained. Some doors closed. His friends got quieter. There were whispers about him at the same places that used to praise him. I didn't destroy him. I just showed the world who he had always been. My revenge wasn't taking his money. It was taking back my sister. If you've ever watched someone you love trade their family for status, or ignore where they came from just to be accepted by richer people, tell me in the comments what you would have done in my place. Would you have stayed quiet, cut them off, or exposed the truth like I did? Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who needs to remember that real love doesn't ask you to be ashamed of your roots. And if you want more long, emotional revenge stories about toxic rich families, social class betrayal, and masks finally falling off, stay tuned. Season 1 is far from over.